Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am good today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much for agreeing to meet with me and have that conversation for the program Ready Plus. I know we chatted a little bit about the project, but I just because people were not part of that conversation, I'm just going to explain what Ready Plus is again.
Sure.
So Ready Plus is a pilot project. As of now, when we talk, it's not has been released yet, but it will be in the future. And it is basically creating resources, a new approach, and resources that comes with that approach, and other things to help educate people to welcome more diversity into their lives, really, and just helping them open their minds to different realities, different people, just something that's not them, and opening their world to others. We The difference between the Ready Plus project and other project is that we are built on a brain-based approach, which is integrating how people of the brain of everyone's work, really. So how do we remove some kind of blocks and barriers that comes from our own experience, or they're built into our brain, kind of, but also on learning more about people's experiences and opening your mind about like learning new things, and more around like social construct, which is something that's added to our human experience. And it's a very interesting project, and I hope people enjoy everything we created. But part of the things that we thought would be helpful is having conversation.
Mm,
Um, because an important part of it is acknowledging nothing replaces lived experience. And we are experts in our own lived experience and our own reality. And what is very helpful with the work that we do is opening new concepts, opening new perspective, like broadening your perspective is very important. And we are with the pilot that we do, we work with another program that support families who are struggling with different things. And so we wanted to kind of open the door to new ways of parenting, understanding family within different contexts. And of course, when I was thinking about it, I thought about you and the type of conversation I could have with you. So I'm going to just introduce myself so people understand better who I am. So I'm Alice. I'm the Ready Plus project coordinator, and I help also do some research and create resources. Um, I am a very proud Black mixed race woman. My mom is from the Caribbean, Black from the Caribbean, and my dad is from white European descent. And I have family everywhere all around the world, but we are also a multi-religious family. We are Catholics and Jewish. We have some Buddhists and Muslims also, and yeah, we're a lot of fun. So I was surrounded by a lot of diversity, which gave a very special meaning to my work, but also I can bring a special lens to the work that I do, because I was raised in that environment where diversity meant so much and bring me so much wealth and understanding that I'm happy to share with other people. I'm also the mother of six kids. I raised six with my ex-partner. Three little ones are still in my care, not right now, but are here usually. And they have wonderful human beings that have some challenges sometimes. Our kids have some disabilities. They have different way of identifying, and there's a bunch of different things that makes it very important for me to teach people how to be more welcome and open to different things, for sure. And yeah, and so I met you through the community. I've known you, you know, my kids. You supported my daughter. And when I was thinking about parenting and in connection with my identities, I felt very strongly about opening the conversation around community parenting and how we should parent in a community. And I was trying to think like, what is a community? What makes a community? And I was really reflecting, and then you came to mind because you have a role in the community, in the Black community in my area, for sure. And so I developed that idea of a conversation that I now title for now, "A Village Takes Villagers." And I wanted to, I don't know, have a conversation with you about you being one of those important villagers.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I love the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And when I saw your title, A Village Takes Villagers, yeah, let's not forget about those villagers, right? Um, so my name is Suzan Richards, and I wear a few different hats. In terms of community, I wear the hat of being the artistic director of the Cultural Arts Studio, and called Teacher Suzanne. That's one of the hats. But I'm also a community auntie. I am an auntie as well. Whereas even students that didn't dance with me because of association, I may not have been their teacher, even though they still call me Teacher Suzanne. But many also call me Auntie Suzanne. I'm a mom. My cultural heritage comes from the beautiful island of Dominica, which I very much embrace and put as part of my teachings. Dominica is a small island between Martinique and Guadeloupe that is the last protected territory of the Kalinago people, one of the two main indigenous tribes of the Caribbean, and mixed with I am the result of the transatlantic slave trade and result of colonialism, where in terms of what runs through me is Nigerian blood, along with some others, but of course, majority, 67% Nigerian, even though both my parents were born in Dominica. So that just kind of reflects some of my cultural intersectionalities. As I mentioned, I'm a mom of two. One is an adult child, which is, new learning for me, how to parent an adult child. and
Other
and
conversation.
that's but I'm lucky. I have a son and a daughter, so I get to experience their intersectionalities and who they are through their lenses. But I'm also a specialist in anti-racism, equity, and inclusion in my day job, where I'm a public servant, and that is my role. That's exactly what I do. A lot of community engagement for internally within the organization that I work for, but as well as with our external partners. So those are some of my layers. I'm a proud artist, and my art is something that has kept me balanced through my journey, this journey called life. I'm very, very fortunate to be able to give back in that way and give back through that lens. And yeah, so artist, and I volunteer on television. I just think it's important to give back. I sit on the board of directors for a local art organization, and again, because I think community engagement is important. It's important that we as villagers sometimes have to take on different roles, right, as to what's needed at the time. So I think I'll stop there with my layers, or else we'll be here forever. but those are the ones that are most important to me: cultural awareness and community engagement.
It sounds like you're the perfect person to have that conversation then. I think I made the right decision.
Well, thank you for having me.
And so you already mentioned that, the title that I wanted, it might change, but right now I really feel strongly about people saying all the time it takes a village, like it takes a
Yep.
village. But we don't ask enough, like what is a village and who is supposed to be in that village? Because
Right.
like it's a great sentence, it's a great expression, but we need more substances now to make it a reality. And so, like you said, you have a lot of different hats, you're a very busy person, but I do know you as teacher Suzanne. Like I do know you, and I know I shared that with you before. I'm like, it's hard for me to call you just Suzanne. I know you teacher Suzanne, you have that role. Like, do you understand the role that you have in the community? Like, are you aware? Like, am I the only person who ever told you that, or do you get that?
I get that all the time, and to be honest, it's an honor. It's an honor. I think I struggle with it when our elders call me Teacher Suzanne, just because, in the Caribbean, we're raised with this mentality of, our elders and, I feel that if by I call them by their last name, or I call them auntie, or I call them uncle, or, and when they call me Teacher Suzanne, I recognize the respect that comes from that. And I also recognize that it's a respect that I earned, and a respect that I need to make sure that I uphold. So there's some pressure sometimes with the whole Teacher Suzanne thing, I have to admit. Sometimes there's some pressure, but it's something that I welcome, and a badge that I wear with honor.
That's good. Yeah, it's also well deserved, but don't want to embarrass you tonight. I mean, it is well deserved, and like that's role. Like, have you had that type of people in your life like before? Like, do you feel like you were emulating someone, or like how does it feel organic to you to have that role?
I think that it was my village growing up. I'm just emulating what I had, I'm emulating the villagers around me. My parents always felt that it was important for us to have cultural knowledge. So, were people in my family that knew the songs, knew the folk songs, knew the dances. It wasn't always the same person, who shared. And then my physical village, my physical community, I grew up on the North Shore of Montreal. So, my parents put me in dance classes and flute and all sorts of different things, gymnastics. I thought I was going to be the next Nadia Comaneci. Gymnastics didn't work out for me. and um, and then when what happened is that when my I had this connection with a dance performing company. So what happened was I was dancing in a regular dance community dance program. And in this regular community dance program, I was always put in the center, in the middle. And I didn't understand why, because I'm in this dance class with my friends. I remember my friend Safi. She was so much better at this one particular dance than I was. And for some reason, I was up front and in the middle, and my friend Safi wasn't. And she was so much better at ballet jazz than I was. I just loved her expression. And I remember asking the teacher, why am I standing here? Why, like, I think Sophie should be here. I guess I was an advocate at that time. And she said, "Oh, well, you balance out my room." And that was my first encounter with being with bias. And of course I didn't have a label for it then, but for her biases, for her understanding of, and it shocked me. And I remember going home, and my mom saying, "What's wrong with you? What happened to you?" Right? Because I was sulking. And I told her what happened. So she yanked me out of that dance studio and put me in with in a black led studio. Downtown Montreal. Now I lived on the suburbs. So downtown Montreal, it was above a strip club, but she put me in that, and it was the same door. And I remember people would call and say, "I saw your daughter." Yes, yes, she's at the dance school above. Anyways, so put me into the Montreal Jazz Dance Academy that was run by Dale King. Dale is a beautiful Black woman. She used to wear braids all the way down her back. She had these long nails. She was unapologetically fabulous. And it was outside of my framing of dance as to what I knew of dance. And I learned so much from her. And I learned so much from her teachers, because she had a Black staff and they were coming from different perspectives. And then I had other opportunities. I got to be a backup dancer for Lorraine Klassen, who's a South African singer. We toured Quebec, so I just had like this cultural submersion that was my village. That
Yeah.
was my village. That was, and I learned so much. I was eating different foods, and then I went on to dance with the West Can Folk Performing Company that was more Caribbean based. So I had the African knowledge, and then I got the Caribbean knowledge from my aunties and uncles, because that's what we called them in dance. We called them auntie and uncle, whoever our instructor was. And that's what gave me my roots, right?
Yeah.
That's what gave me all the different experiences that I had. So it's definitely the village that created me. I took what I thought was the best part of
Hmm.
that village. I've made mistakes along the way for sure, but I took and tried and tested different things, and here we are.
And you think it was important for you to have a village that looked like you and you could relate to. That's why I took from your story.
Yes, yes, but not, they didn't all look like me because the Caribbean is so diverse, right? So,
Hmm.
um, uh, it was more, we came from the same cultural perspective and same cultural understanding. It wasn't necessarily solely on color.
Hmm.
It was on culture and
Okay.
having that understanding. Mhm.
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's good because it must be hard for you to imagine yourself like not having that village. Like you would have been a completely different person.
Oh my gosh. I don't even think I would. Yeah. I don't know if I would even be living in the Ottawa, Outaouais region, because I don't know where life would have taken me. Um, but I'm happy that life has taken me here.
Me too. Me too. And I think what I find interesting with the conversation around the village and everything that you said is that you right away acknowledge that it was about, like, yes, your mother listening to you, but her opening the door to other adults being in your life.
For sure.
And so how would you, like, what is it, what do you think, what contribution do you think other adults can bring to children when they're raised in community?
That's a really good question. I think it's trust, and say what you mean and mean what you say. There's a lot of adults, even adults in my life, who say one thing and do another, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that it's trust. I'll go back to my tour days. I remember Lorraine had to come to my house and speak to my parents before I went on this Quebec tour. And she had to say to them and explain to them that I will take care of your daughter the same way that you would take care of your daughter. I will make sure and that she's not running the streets and and make sure that she's, because we were touring. Right, we were touring and we were staying at hotels and performing
Mhm.
in bars. I was 15, so
Mhm.
so
That's a
she
lot.
had to, yeah, yeah. So she had to come with her agent, and I remember them sitting in my parents' living room because I so wanted to go, and I thought for sure that my mom
Mhm.
would say, my parents, not just my mom, but my parents would say no. But they had to come and have a conversation, and my parents had to trust them.
Mhm.
They had to trust them that wasn't going to happen. Sorry about that. I
Mhm.
I trust. So I think that trust is a big thing, and I think that when I think of um, my journey to teacher Suzanne has been based on trust. If parents trusted that I'm going to start on time, I'm going to finish on time, the content of what I'm teaching is relevant.
Mhm.
Their student, my student, is going to learn something valuable. They trusted that. They trusted in my knowledge, and they trusted in the way that I imparted knowledge. So I would say trust.
Yeah, it's a good thing. But also when you were describing your role as a teacher, like I know people trust you, and also you teach, like you taught more than dance. Like knowing you, because my kids don't, we did a few dance classes with you for sure, but I find like being around you, I know that you teach more than just dance to kids, like discipline, like
Yes.
being reliable, respect, etc., etc. Like there's a lot of good influence you can have on kids when you're an adult. And you said something that I want us to explore together because it's something important, and I don't have the right words to describe it. So maybe together we can do that. But
Right.
you told me that some parents would tell their kids, like, I'm going to tell teacher Susanna, she's not going to be happy with you. And they were like, no. And you use the word fear, like they kind of have a fear of me, which I get, but it's not a fear specifically, because I felt like that with my grandmother or some of my aunties. Like, I fear them, but I know they're never gonna hurt me. Like, I have this deep connection, this deep sense of safety that they will never hurt me. They will never abuse me. Like, I love them. But I would not cross there. Like,
Right.
I will not, but I don't know why. And I don't know what it is. Like, do you have a good way to describe this? Like, let's try and finally explain to people what
Yeah.
community respect is.
I think it's auntie with a capital A. Right? You
Mhm.
know? I understand what you're saying, and honestly I'm not
Mhm.
even sure because I didn't even know that I had this influence. Let's call it
Mhm.
influence.
Yeah.
Let's call it, like, when we think about, today's term of influencer,
Mhm.
it's so, if we think about, maybe taking it back, before the internet and influencer, who was an
Mhm.
influencer? Was
Mhm.
somebody in your life um, who would either be showing you something or teaching you something or encouraging you to do something. There were influencers. So maybe it's not fear, but a strong influence.
Mhm.
Um, for me, dance is, it's not just moving your body. There's so much more that comes along with it. And especially with cultural dance, it's important to know what you're dancing.
Mhm.
It's important to know that your hands are like this for a reason. We
Mhm.
place our head like this for a reason. We wear this for a reason. It's not just, oh, because. And that
Mhm.
ancestral knowledge is something that I try to impart. The respect part comes as being a dancer. It just
Mhm.
translates. If you're dancing with a group of people, you want to make sure that you're respecting your space, you're respecting their space, and that word space comes in different ways. From
Mhm.
the words that we use, from from the physical space, from the energy that we exude, that all takes space. So, you know, I think that the influence that I have, or was that I'm sharing what I think are values of Afro Caribbean dance, and those
Mhm.
values of Afro Caribbean dance influences um, positive behavior,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
maybe instills that, like, ooh, because I'm very, very honest, and I think that we need to be honest with our dancers or with
Mhm.
our children.
Mhm.
There's a time and a place for everything. I'm not saying,
Yeah.
you just kind of, there's a time and a place. So, for example, if I have a dancer who um, is at that point in their life of development, and I'm going to notice it because they're sweating
Mhm.
and there's an odor,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
because their hormones are changing and so forth. So I know this. I'm sure their parents have noticed this. I'm sure the conversation has happened. But that dancer may not have realized how what's happening with themselves, their body, their attitude, their spirit is influencing others around them.
Mhm.
So that's where I'll come in and privately, of course, be like, I noticed your body's changing, and I noticed that it's changing, in different ways. One that I'm noticing is maybe your odor is a little bit different when you're sweating, right? It's like, oh, embarrassing,
Mhm.
hard conversation to have, but auntie's going to have this conversation with you because I can't handle it, right? Because so if you imagine in a
Yeah.
class of 30 dancers, all of the same age, all going through this hormonal change, it's the odor could be a little fresh sometimes. So, yeah. So, I will talk to them about it. Sometimes if I'll usually talk to them as a group, age appropriateness, say this is where we're at as dancers. This is what my expectation is. When you come to class, you're wearing a clean bodysuit, because at that age, there's also more responsibility that's put on to the dancer, to the child, right? So as parents, the parents are like, I told her to come with to make sure she washed her suit. She didn't. That's her problem. So in that disciplining, it's still affecting me, right? So I got to have that conversation too. So I'll have that conversation either individually, depending on the situation, depending on the person, because we can't all. It's not all the same. Not all children are going to receive a message in the same way.
No.
Or I'll have it as a group. It's like, okay, let's sit down and talk about a dancer's hygiene,
Which parents should be grateful? Like, thank you for having someone who's just there to just take on that conversation. Like, yeah, good.
It's not easy. It's not an easy conversation. It's easier when it's not your own child, right? So, like, I have kids, right? If I was to be like, to my own kids, they'd be offended. It might not be the
It's
same,
different.
but it's different. The relationship
But
is different.
that's the plus also, because we are talking about building a village, but also the work is like taking the support of someone else, like having that type of conversation, doing that type of work. But parents also need to accept that role might be taken on by someone else. And so it's building your comfort zone, because when you're not raised in community, or you're not used to that community influence, and you were raised like that within the model, like the nuclear family model, for example, and your parents were the one in charge, and all of a sudden other adults are starting to have this conversation and talk, like this might be an adjustment. Let's just say it might be an adjustment.
It is, and you're absolutely right. Not all parents appreciated the conversation that I was having with their kids. Some of them may have been like, "Ooh, Teacher Suzanne, I bring my kid for dance. I don't bring her for,
Yeah, well, that's the experience. Sorry, that's the Teacher Suzanne experience.
Like, have you met me?
I love that.
And these are just little things, like when I'm teaching them about being on time, they'd be scared to be late. Yes, because it's disrespectful to everybody who is there on time, ready to dance, ready to go. You're coming in late, and now I've got to repeat, and it's taking away the experience. I wouldn't repeat. I just didn't. So they knew to be on time.
Yeah. It's good. So, but like you said, like I think it's a big it's an important part of the conversation to talk about, to you even know, naming like they're scared of being late, because this is my expectation. They know that's what I expect, and that's what's going to happen. And it's so important for people from outside of communities who don't function with that model to understand, to hear someone talk about that, them be scared, or that fear, understanding that it's not an actual fear. They're not actually scared. Because I think people with racism, with discrimination, if people hear fear with the Black woman, what are they going to think? What do you think they're going to think?
Yeah.
They're going to think it's about like abuse, like physical violence, or being scared of being hurt, being scared of being attacked, all of that. That is from the the racist imagination that this is how Black people are, when it's in fact like proven that it's not true, and quite the opposite, actually. So that's why I wanted to ask about the fear, because it's not a fear. Like I understand the feeling.
It's leading with love, a very strong, big love, and that love, I think what happens is that whether it's love of the whatever they're doing, the art, the activity, the community, it's a fear of disappointing. It's not even a fear. It's that individual does not want to disappoint the person that has a big influence in their life.
Yeah. Yes.
So and it's not wanting to disappoint. Yeah.
And it's more than a theory. I know it's true, but it's more, and that's what's fascinating with the conversation and all of the conversation that I might have is that we have in common, the Afro descendants, we have something in common about being brought up in community. Like we are, but being raised in a community, especially Black communities, and especially when we are descendant of enslaved people, there's a lot of cultural practices that are not talked about. It's
Mm-hmm.
like kind of in the air. So even that feel like we don't have a name for it. And there's a lot of things that we are in common that we don't really talk, we don't have words. We just know it's there. It's just like
Because we don't necessarily have a language for it. We don't
no,
have words for
exactly.
all of it because some of it's even body gesture. Some of it's just the way that we look in our eyes, the way that we might focus our eyes. You know,
But
we
that's
communicate on so many different levels.
that's also part of my work to kind of try and decipher part of it and use the wisdom that's within communities. And one of the things that I observe is that raising kids in community, especially Caribbean community, because that's what I know, it's boundaries. It's about setting boundaries, having community boundaries about behavior and
Yes.
like what are the expectations and the fact that expectations are common to all adults and those are the boundaries. And sometimes for people who are developing, especially when it comes to emotions, boundaries don't feel great.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what's like in within your community, your experience, how like when I say it's about boundaries also, how does it like do you have something to share about, the role of aunties, uncles, and all those
Mhm.
people around to build those boundaries?
You know, it's funny because the first thing I thought about was, you know, when you are younger and you're going out, let's say, with an auntie, an uncle, or parent, you get the boundaries at the beginning. Here's where we're going. We're going to this house. We're staying at this time. Don't touch anything. Don't ask for anything to eat. Like we're, you know what I mean? Don't ask for anything to eat. If you're offered something, you better take it. Like we're given those
Uh-huh.
boundaries from before we leave the house.
Yeah.
And we're told, don't ask if you can sleep over because you can't sleep over. Don't ask if they can sleep over because the answer is going to be no. We give those are given to us
Mhm.
before we even arrive at whatever it is that we're doing.
Mhm.
Even if it's something fun, we're going to the park, da, 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 right? Those boundaries are given. It's part of our culture, right? It's part of our culture to share what the expectations
Mhm.
are. So that to me is what boundaries are. That's kind of the first thing that came to my mind of sharing expectations, and we all do it. We try even to do it with ourselves as adults. Okay, I'm going to this party. I'm only going to have one drink. I'm staying till for 1 hour. I know so and so's going to be there. They're going to piss me off, so I'm not going to talk to them. I'm going to talk right. Like we try to we create these boundaries in our minds before we even get to where we're going or to do the activity that we're doing. We do it for ourselves, and then when we have children, or if we are in a position of leading children or leading, you know we do that. We do the same thing with our parents. I have an aging mom, and it's the same thing. Okay, mom, we're going here, but we set those expectations before we even go. I'm only staying a couple of hours, and don't ask me to go and pick up Auntie so and so because I don't want. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
we do all that naturally. I don't know if other communities do it. I know that we do.
Yeah, we know that we do, and if we share that, maybe other communities will start and share it. But I think one of the things we kind of explored with the program, like that's there's Ready Plus my project, but we are also like combined with another project that support family, like I said at the beginning. And one of the founding that they have and now that they use is using nonviolent resistance to teach families to build more resilience when they
Mm,
face challenges. And one of the things they found is that being raised in a community is positive, especially with behavior, because you have boundaries reinforced by multiple different adults in your
that's right.
life. And so there's consistency. And it's one of the things that I loved is that the wisdom to resist violence without feeding the cycle already existed in
Mm-hmm.
communities.
Mm-hmm.
It already
Yeah.
existed. It was there, but when it's marginalized community, people like the system, really, a society, the dominant society doesn't really look up to those communities. They don't think they do things right, but in that situation and in many situations, they do things really, really right.
Absolutely. I agree.
So I love the wisdom of boundaries. Really, it's when you describe the way you describe it is perfect. Like, do not go there, do not touch it, do not do that, do not do this. But I hear, like, I do see the difference between Caribbean community and the fact that I was my dad is what European, and so I do know two sides of the way you can be raised by community.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's some communities who, like, the more boundaries you put on children, the more it's like, oh, but they are kids. Like, come on, they are kids. Like, let them be kids, let them play, play, play. And I see this like me being raised in a Caribbean community, like most of the time. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they need to be responsible. They need to be accountable. They need to be respectful. Like, all of those things that, are so
Right.
different.
Well, the thing is why? It's because the question we have to ask ourselves is why? And it's because we don't want to disappoint,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's that's part of the circle when we're talking about before in terms of that fear, in terms of it's not really fear, it's that influence. We don't want to disappoint that influence. So when we're giving the barriers, da 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 da, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because one, we don't want them to be disrespectful, but also we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be embarrassed by their behavior,
Mhm.
right?
No, we
Because the
don't.
village will look at you like, did right? So I think that both concepts are linked because we feel that we have a responsibility to and we're influenced by what the expectations are from our community, right? I mean, I've been at events and places where a child will step out of line and the whole village will be like, who raised them?
Mhm.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And the village will not even say anything. There'll be that nonverbal turn of the head, kotai,
Mhm.
and slow blink,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
The slow blink,
Mhm.
you need to tone it down. How
Mhm.
many times have I been in places where, I've seen and I catch myself doing it and I'm like, oh, but I'm like, no, they need to know it's not okay.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because we're taking like sign language lesson and they were teaching us about expression, like facial, because it's part of signing. You need to
Yes.
work with your face. And they were like, what would you do if you need to show you're really hungry about something? And like, it depends. Am I a black mom or because it needs to be very subtle, like
That's see, ooh.
that's enough. That's a who.
Mm.
That's a chill down my spine.
That
But
stop in your tracks. That'll stop in your tracks. But and the thing is, it's cultural. If you think about it, you know, talking with our face is part of our culture.
Mhm.
It very much is. And it's similar in indigenous communities. Indigenous communities speak with their face as well.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, it hasn't been talked a lot about in from Black communities or Afro descendant communities, but we talk with our face. We point with our mouth. We, like just everything, right? And so, but I think it's something that needs to be recognized as
Mhm.
part of our language, part of the way that we communicate.
Oh, 100%. Because when she asked the question, I'm like, instantly in my mind, I was like, oh, it depends who's making the face. Because people have different way to express anger. And there's some people in my community, the less expression, the worse it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
you flip it. No, it's very different. And I think it's important to not open all the doors to the community, but some of them are important just so there's a understanding that cultural expectations are different. They're not the same depending on like where you come from, what community you come from, or what's your social background. Like, there's so many different factors that I'm hoping that professional people who can listen to our conversation understand that you need to sit down and listen to someone and not let your instinct judge the situation, because if you don't understand cultural expectations sometimes,
Exactly.
then it's ground for a misunderstanding.
Exactly. And depending where the person comes from
Mm-hmm.
will depend on how they answer you. We not in within Afro descendant cultures, we don't all speak directly. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily going to answer with a yes or no. I'm going to tell you a story,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm going to say,
Yeah.
well, blah, blah, blah. And then, if someone from outside the community be like, what? Where are we going with this? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you sit and you listen, as you say, you will hear whether the response was a yes or no based
Mm-hmm.
on the story that
The
was just
context.
told to you.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's well said. Because someone that I interviewed said she's rumbling, and I think you're just trying to be very clear. I think that's what it is. And I love there's a lot I love, but what for you, like everything that we shared, it's so important. I love that conversation. Is there something like, I don't know, a story, an experience, something specific that for you represents the strengths or the resilience of the Black community when it comes to raising children, like the
Mm.
really positive aspect of, you're thinking, if, or the Caribbean, not just the Black community, but something that you want to share, saying like, this is how we raise our kids, this is how we do things right. I think that's what helps me raise strong and resilient kids.
Yeah. I think what we do right and need to embrace more are those cultural teachings. I think that what we do right is, regardless of someone's social economic background, when there's a certain things like on a Sunday, you will see clean children, braided hair, shiny faces, powdered up, smelling good, and a good meal. Most in our culture, in our community, I think we do that well. We do that, those setting them up to succeed well, because it doesn't matter whether they were raised here or raised in Africa or the Caribbean. How we present ourselves
Mm-hmm.
has always been important, and we do that
Yes.
well.
Yes.
We feed our children well. I'm not saying that we don't do the nuggets and you know and stuff every once in a while, but
Mm-hmm.
we tend to lean on our cultural teachings around food, um, and also our cultural practices around food. And what I mean by that is saying grace, whatever that looks like, whatever faith, taking that moment of gratitude and being grateful is something that I see that transcends in our community very well.
Mm-hmm.
We give thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what you call creator.
Mm-hmm.
We give thanks very well. We appreciate the gifts of this day. You know,
Mm-hmm.
our you could talk to a senior Caribbean woman, and she'll, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about my mom when I say woman. We'll be like, I'm aching here, I'm aching there. This person got on my nerves, but it'll always end with the giving thanks.
Well blessed.
Com- you'll get the list of complaints,
Yeah.
right? But thank Creator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, I'm alive. So I think that spirituality, whatever you call it, for you and your family. I think we do that well.
And I think I could see where it comes from. Like, just, I find like sometimes, even when you're in survival mode constantly, it forces you to see that life is still beautiful.
Yes.
And I know that's something that I see also in the resilience that I see in my mom and my grandmother, my aunties, even in myself a lot more and more as I, experience more and more things, is that joy, that love
Yes.
for life that's just not, that's never going to go away no matter what we go through. Tomorrow can be better.
Exactly, exactly. And still thank you for today.
Mhm.
And I think that just comes from, we are such a resilient people that come from
Mhm.
uh that have such a huge faith, whatever you want to call it, whatever your practice is. I'm not talking about individual practices of faith, but we come from a place of faith. We are born from a place of faith. Faith is what got us through,
Mhm.
slavery. It's what got us through hardship, and what got us through colonization. It's
Mhm.
faith. It's
We have a deep need for spirituality.
Exactly. So, regardless of what, it's always there. Regardless of what level someone might have it in their life, it's always there. Even people that I know that are not necessarily huge practitioners of their faith
Yeah.
will always be like, whew,
Mhm.
even if they're saying TGIF, it's still,
And it's true.
it's still comes from a place of faith.
It's funny because I think that's the part that I'm the most intimidated sometimes to share with the outside world, because I think
Yes.
people don't necessarily understand spirituality. No, not the same way, but even spirituality in general, when it's a little like out of their things that are used to, or even little like outside of the box, or a
Yeah.
little esoteric. They're like, I know that. So I might be a little guarded and cautious when I share with people. I'm trying to be better because there's nothing to be ashamed of, and if it's part of who I am, it's okay. But is there something that you think there's a huge misconception around, or that like Black or Caribbean people face, uh, like a negative judgment for
Mhm.
that cultural practice, or that way of doing things, that people don't necessarily understand if you're from outside of the community? What would be the one thing that you feel come up regularly and you're like, no, no, this comes from you not getting where I'm coming from?
Yeah, yeah. So the one that I get the most, just through dance and through what I do at dance, is really understanding our our faith base, the base of our faith. The reality is, someone might want to disagree with me, but that's fine. um, in Africa, or if we think about, our indigenous groups, they all had their cultural practices around faith.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those cultural practices around faith included music, included dance, included ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Those ceremonies are misunderstood. And
Mm-hmm.
those ceremonies, in my humble opinion, are misunderstood because, and don't come for me, right? But are misunderstood because they were taught to fear through colonialism, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and there were documents and books that were brought, missing pieces
Mm-hmm.
that was used to instill fear, through slavery. And because of that, there's parts that are missing. We're told to be afraid of the things that we do naturally, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm speaking from experience. For myself, I'm 54. And this year, I decided to be more open with my spirituality because I was practicing secretly.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through a divorce, and in my previous marriage, previous marriage. I've only had one marriage. Anyways,
Mhm.
in my marriage, I wasn't practicing in the open. So I'm a person who I've got my singing bowl and my sage. I use crystals. I meditate. I also pray. I was raised Catholic. I pray. I go to church. I take communion. There's so much stuff that's added to who makes me who I am, partially because of what I know through dance and ceremony and so forth. So I decided when I divorced to be more open with my children about who is mommy,
Mhm.
because what they were seeing was only part of me.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if I can't be authentic with my own children, who can I be authentic with? So I started talking to them and explaining. One of my children was kind of like, I don't know about all this hocus pocus, mom. and, and one of my children kind of was like, yeah, okay, makes sense. They're not necessarily on the same level as I am in terms of the practices that I do, but they understand and they respect it.
Mhm.
They know. It's like they'll be like, oh, mom's burning something.
Mhm. Yeah.
you know, and it's no longer like, what's that smell? And the big panic. They know that
Yeah.
I'm burning something. They know, depending where I am or what I smell like, even they're like, oh,
Mhm.
mom, are you okay? I'm smelling this on you in terms of some of the natural oils that I use to ground myself, and also being open with the messages that I receive.
Mhm.
We call it gut, right? Most people will say in the broader community will say, "Oh, I had a gut feeling,"
Mhm.
right? To me, that's spirit talking to me,
Mhm.
right? As part of my spirituality, I'm like, oh, my kids know. I'll be like, no, my spirit telling me you're not going. Nope, sorry, I had a
Well,
dream.
is
Right?
it is it like what's the difference between your spirit and a gut though? Your gut talking to you,
This
you
is what I'm
know.
saying. It's the same thing, but it's almost like we were ancestrally told to fear our gut, to fear spirit. So in
Mhm.
because of that, it has to me, in my opinion, it has affected our spirituality as a Black community,
Yes.
because we're also not doing ceremony together.
Wow. It's probably because people are trying to control us. And
Yes,
to control someone, you need to separate them from their instincts. So it does make
exactly.
sense what you're saying and wanting to reclaim that connection to ourselves. I think it makes
Mhm.
sense. And what do you think,
Exactly.
like someone, if it was someone from outside of the community, like I said, we don't want to open the door like wide open. I think we
Yeah,
deserve our safe space and our own thing.
absolutely.
But if you needed in some context to share part of this that is a bit more vulnerable, like what does someone could like how would you want them to react to you disclosing something vulnerable to make you
Yeah.
feel safe?
I think I just have to explain that, or not necessarily explain, just say that my spirituality is very much a part of my lens. It's one of my intersectionalities,
Hmm.
right? So when we at the beginning of this conversation, when we talked about who we are, you
Hmm.
know, you know. That's why I said we could go on and on.
Hmm.
Spirituality, our belief system, could well easily be added to that. This is
Hmm.
my belief system. This is my spirituality. And my spirituality, depending on, when we're talking in this context, like if somebody was to ask, my spirituality is very complex. It's some of it I don't even know. Some of it I
Hmm.
don't even understand. Some of it I can't explain.
Hmm.
But it's just who I am.
Yeah.
And I may need to take some time to connect with myself in order to be able to help you, support you, help you understand, and also understand that if somebody from the outside or from the outside of this community is trying to understand something within the Black community, understand that we are all at different places on our spiritual journey. You
Mm-hmm.
can all be of the same faith. I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can all be of the same faith and be on different parts of this journey. So
Absolutely. Well, in my own introduction, I said my family is multi-religious,
you
and my family
did.
is multi-religious. I think it's definitely part of my identity is because, it's like I know Friday is Shabbat. I know that Sunday is Mass. Like it's just very much part of my identity. So if I interact with someone or if I send an email to someone, I will try. If I know they're Jewish, I will try not to send it on Friday, et
Yes.
cetera, et cetera. So it's part of integrating all the identities of people around you to make sure you respect them and you show them that you understand
That's
who they
right.
are. So
That's right. And even like
spirituality is
in
definitely
this society, when people are organizing activities, like even team activities, to be conscious of that, right?
yeah
Like
to be
maybe
respectful.
don't do it in a bar because,
Hmm.
and then wonder, oh, so and so does never comes to our socials. Well, it's always at a bar.
Yeah.
And it goes against their belief system,
Mhm.
or it's always on a Friday, or it's always on it, right? So,
Mhm. So
yeah,
if you want things to be accessible, then you need to really think about what accessibility means to everybody.
exactly.
It was not supposed to be part of the conversation, but I love this because it is so true. Like you want inclusion, like flip it and think about how what am I doing that excludes people, and then you're going to
Exactly.
solve a lot of your problems for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think to finish the conversation because we started with it, so let's just close the
Yeah.
loop about hearing all the time. It takes a village. Like I hear it a lot, like a lot, and I think it's a way people are sharing kind of a desperation. Honestly, people are kind of desperate to find their village, to have a village. I think parents are overwhelmed and overworked, and it's just society is just too much lately. But a question that I have for you and that I for everybody that I will meet ever for the rest of my life, maybe it's damn it, like what happened to that village? Like if we had it for sure, like raising kids in community is core to most cultures around the world. I think it's the global majority of people raise kids in community, but those community kind of disappear, especially in the Western
Yeah.
cultures. um, so, in your opinion, do you, what from your own lens, personal lens and experience, living in North America, like what do you think happened to that village? And if it for you, how did you build your own village, and how would you help other people build their own?
Yeah. So for me, I guess the answer is a little multi-layered. One is who are you? What tribe are you?
Hmm.
Like who are you anyways, right? If you think about a village is not, it's not a monolith, right? Not everybody's the same, right? Who's we if a true village will have, you know, different faiths, different beliefs, different ages, different colors, different right? And like it's a true village should comprise of, it should look like a kaleidoscope, right? And I think we've lost it because we've lost who we are. Who are we? Who's what's my tribe? Where do I belong? What's my language? What's so if we're lost and you don't know who you are, like if you're outside your village and all of a sudden now you're in a, to use a metaphor of leaving a village and going to the big city, you know, if you're in the big city and you're lost and someone asks you, where did you come from? How did you get here? Who are you, to help you get back? If you don't know, then how are you going to get back to the village? And if you have a village full of people who have no idea who they are, and that is a challenge. Second layer to that is they don't know who they are. We don't know who we are as individuals, and we're not. Once we do figure it out, there's challenges in being our authentic selves as to who we are. That is the other challenge to the village. Because if you cannot be your authentic self, if you cannot, we talked about joy before, just be your joyful self, because you're worried about, oh, are they going to like this side of me? They're not going to like this prism. Am I going to be accepted in my village? Right? You shouldn't have to worry about all that.
Yeah.
Because the village is supposed to be this kaleidoscope of everything. Right? So that to me is that next layer, right, of the issues that are happening in our village. We don't know who we are, where we come from, and then when we do figure it out, we're challenged. No, you're not really that. You're not really that. No, you can't be that.
Yeah.
Right? Who said? Right? So, and as we talked about before, like you can't be who you are, so you're not practicing the things that you believe in. You're not identifying as your villager role, your true villager role, right?
It's true. Yeah, it makes
So,
sense. Yeah, because
so
now that means that building a village is, it's not the more the merrier. It's quality over quantity then.
exactly. If you're building something, if you are building a house, you know, you need different people of different skills and abilities and expertise in order to build the house. Yes, there might be one person that can do it all, but they're not going to be an expert. They're not going to be a master of their yeah, of their
They may not be
craft.
around all the time too.
Exactly. So, and then that person will get exhausted and drained, right? Because they're right. So
Everywhere.
there's that. And then the other part is like, well, what are we, once we figure out where we are, who we are, where we're going, are we taking somebody else with us or are we going alone?
Hmm. What do we need?
Exactly. And not all villages are the same. They're
No.
not the same. We got to stop this. Like, okay, we need this. Not all villages are the same. You know what I mean? Like when we think about, villages in if we look at the continent, and there's the villages that are just women. There are villages that are led by women. There are villages that are led by men. There are villages that are led by children. There are, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, who says that the village has to look like XYZ?
Yeah. It's funny when you say that because it's part of what the conversation that we had. Like the norm, like there's no really norm, but also about boundaries. Because
Yes.
when we were talking, I'm like, oh, because maybe the village, like it's your village because there's boundaries that makes it your village also, not just the people, but just what makes the limit of the village. And
Yeah.
not everybody can be in the village, not everybody should be in the village, and we don't have to
Exactly.
look like each other, but maybe we should need to share some boundaries so we can actually exist in that situation. So I think it's interesting.
Exactly.
It's an
Yeah.
interesting way to present it. So that's kind of what like you would suggest to someone if they want to build a village. Like you make sure like it's not about there's not fixed rules, but it's about becoming yourself.
Yeah. If you're gonna go buy a car, you're not just gonna go buy any car. You should look at your personal needs. You're gonna look at your budget. You're gonna look at your needs. What do I need to do with this car? Am I hauling wood or am I hauling kids? Am I hauling,
Mhm.
like what am I traveling a lot? Like you take the time, right, to figure out what you need. And I think that when we look at individuals, when we look at the concept of a village, what do we truly need? And it's dynamic. I used to drive a minivan when my kids were little. I no longer drive a minivan. It's dynamic, that it changes, and we have to allow people to change.
Mhm.
I used to feel a lot of pressure with the whole Teacher Suzanne thing.
Mhm.
I used to go out and I'd be like, oh, okay, where am I going? Can I be just Suzanne? Because I'm kind of silly. Okay, I'm a
Yeah.
little wonky sometimes, and I'm silly, and I like to laugh,
Mhm.
and but I would feel pressure sometimes, depending where I was going. I'll give you an example. We did the Afro Caribbean Cotillion, where we worked with young
Mhm.
folks on
Yes, I remember.
right on the dining etiquette. So I went to an event and I'm sitting at a table with, there was a table of 10, sitting with other folks, and I asked for the butter. They're like, I don't know how to do this in front of you. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, because you did that whole etiquette class, and I don't know if I'm supposed to do it like this or like that. And they're all panicked. I was like, I just want some butter. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
in that space, I was not the cotillion lady who's,
Yeah.
I'm a guest, and I would just please
I'm a
pass
guest
the
who wants
butter.
butter. Because butter is good.
Right? It had nothing to do with, oh, do I
Yeah.
pass it with to the left, to the right, or do I place it down? It was just so funny to me. So for a while I was kind of uh very conscious of where I was going and how I was would present myself.
Mhm.
And part of that was something that I had to work on because it wasn't anybody else that was putting that pressure on
Like
me,
yourself, yeah.
but myself.
So you understood that a village needs to kind of accept your multifaceted self and
Exactly.
allow you to wear different
Yeah,
hats and be different people because you are more than one thing. You are multiple things at the same time.
exactly. Exactly. But I had to accept that within myself,
Mm-hmm.
and once I accepted that within myself, and that's what I'm giving out. That's what I'm presenting. So, it's either you like it or you don't. you know. But but I think that's something that also comes with age and comes with wisdom and comes with learning,
Yeah.
and because it comes from that, when you say something or something happens and you're like, oh, I wish I would have said this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, so it's kind of taking all those experience and saying, no, I'm going to say this, because it's my
Yeah.
authentic self, as long as I'm not hurting somebody else and, if it's appropriate
Yeah.
at that time, whatnot. But I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to say, no, I don't like that. How many times do we go, even in our community, and someone gives us something to eat or and we're kind of like, I really don't want to eat that. But
Mm-hmm.
we're like,
uh,
I really don't want that, right? And we would lie, right?
yeah.
And we would essentially lie. We would essentially be like, oh, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. And then we try to, and yes, it's part of politeness. Instead of saying something like, oh, I'm allergic to that, or it's not
Mhm.
really my thing, or you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like we put pepper on everything, right? So
And now you share that wisdom of like saying no with others today. So that's really nice.
I try. I try. Like I am not perfect, and it's an
No, but
ongoing.
you acknowledge that it's a work, like it's a life work. We're always improving,
Yes.
always working on ourselves, and
Yes.
you kind of come up like you understand yourself better, and so there's this journey that you're able to share. And for what we were talking about today, it's really about the village. And the way you describe it, it's a village is like it's boundaries, it's respect, it needs to feel my soul, but it needs also to help me accept myself
Be
in all my
authentic. Yes.
in
Hmm.
all my complexities. And this is when I built something that helped me just thrive as my authentic self. Like this is what the
Exactly.
village should feel like. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to build the village, I think one of the advice is you need to be your authentic self. Find a way to be surrounded by people who help you be your authentic self.
Absolutely, because that is when people can truly call upon you,
Hmm.
right? Because you're the subject matter expert of yourself. So
Hmm.
that's when people can truly say, ah, okay, just like you did, right? I need this. I want to have this conversation. I know that I can go talk to Suzanne, because
Mm-hmm.
she's going to be authentic and she's going to be truthful with with the conversation and not necessarily worried about what other people think, you know.
And she
When I
knows what
had
she's talking about.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, it's pretty much that. I mean, I have to say the village will contract and it will expand
Mhm.
as well, you know, and we have to allow it to breathe. We
It's
have to
like
let it breathe.
us. It's like us. It's alive.
It does. It's a life of its own, and it gets harder and harder the further away that we get from our root.
Hmm.
It will get harder. So for our children, our children's children, you know what I mean? It'll get harder for them if we don't try to make sure that that information and that knowledge continues to get passed on, and that it's okay. You
Yeah.
know, I have to say this joke sometimes. um we'll be doing something. Let's say, we'll be doing something. I'm going back to cooking because, we cook a lot in my house.
Yeah.
And one of my children will be doing something. I'm like, why are you doing it that way? They're like, oh, it's the Caribbean way. that's that's how we do it in the Caribbean, Mom. And I'm like,
It's good. Well, thank you for having the conversation with me the Caribbean way. I think it was great. And thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your time. And thank you for the lovely conversation that I know is going to be helpful and educational for a lot of people who want to do better when it comes to supporting families.
thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. The work that you do is in the spirit of Sankofa, learning from the past. If you look at the Sankofa bird, the feet are going one direction, the head is going another, picking up that nugget of knowledge to be able to fly forward. And that's what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.